So I imagine for anybody, I mean, whether you are part of the military or not, the idea that people would try to jump overboard just as a desperate attempt to escape the conditions that they're in is utterly heartbreaking. I'm sure just for you alone, given that you have been a part of the US military for many years, I'm sure that the news is devastating for so many of us to read that. Obviously, it's not just one thing that would drive someone or might drive someone to do that. I mean, obviously, yes, I imagine it's the monotony. It's the fact that, there's nowhere to escape to. It's the fact that it hasn't docked at a port for many months. And then when you think it's almost over, you're told that the deployment is again being extended. And of course, we can't ignore the fact that there are personal mental health issues involved as well. Just walk us through your thoughts on what the Defense Department should be doing to mitigate this.
Yeah, Zane, it's good to be with you. And this is a really serious issue for the military and really for any military in the world. It is, and also for people in general, for society in general, because what you're dealing with here is people who are in a space that is limited. Yes, you're going halfway around the world. You're performing a mission. That can be very exciting work to do that. But once you do the routine of that mission, it becomes routine. And that, of course, can lead to, people being careless, people, ending up with mental issues because they can't escape that particular routine or those particular stresses. And I think the stresses are really among the most important things here. So when you have a unit, whether it's a naval unit on board a ship, or you're with the Army or with an Air Force unit, mental health for people who are in deployed conditions is extremely, extremely important. And the motivating factors, from leadership as well as, from the troops themselves, play a critical role. The Navy has tried to do some things. They have things like therapy dogs on board, one therapy dog on board the USS Lincoln, for example. They have mental health counselors, and that's all well and good, but the realities of those deployments, the conditions of those deployments, are the ones that leadership needs to help mitigate and make as normal as possible, in spite of the stresses, in spite of the distances involved. And that can be a real challenge for leadership, for the organization, and sometimes the organizations fall short. They can learn from situations like this and hopefully not repeat them. But really long deployments that extend beyond what the crew was told, that can be a significant burden for anyone, both mentally and physically.
And so one of the things that the Defense Department is doing right now is swapping the carrier, is essentially deploying the USS George Washington to relieve the USS Abraham Lincoln. But apparently the swap was planned. Is that enough? Because yes, that might address the issue of the sort of conditions on board the USS Abraham Lincoln, but it doesn't address the stressors that you are talking about.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, because those stressors can continue, and there's always a risk. And you hate to point this out, as the Lincoln is about to be relieved, but there's always a possibility that something could happen where the Lincoln would be called upon to do something, defend itself, or there's a new situation that they need to respond to. Could be a natural disaster, could be another military situation. So the crew always has to be ready, and that very fact that is an added stressor to the crew, and they know this. There is that glimmer of hope, that one imagines one would have, if you were in an isolated area, like, let's say trapped in a mine shaft for a long period of time, and then you see that light at the end of the tunnel. Well, this is the kind of thing that they see. They know that the George Washington is coming to relieve them. At least that's the plan. But until the George Washington gets on station and the Lincoln can move off station, that is something that they're waiting for, and they hope that that glimmer of light is going to be something that they can actually move toward and eventually get back to home port, in this case San Diego. And that of course is a critical thing for the crew and for all their families as well.
CNN is reporting that Trump's top general is looking for an off-ramp from the war. He's acknowledged publicly that air power has its limits. I wonder if you think the U.S. military has done all that it can against Iran from the skies.
From the skies, for sure, the naval blockade is certainly having a large effect on their economy, and that could continue. And then the other element of power, of course, would be ground forces, but I don't see that in the cards, given the significant opposition the president would run into in Congress and among the American people.
So given this pivot from hostilities to more sort of financial warfare, if you will, as you put it, with the blockade, I wonder if you think this now will make Tehran more amenable to concessions, or does this weaken the U.S. position when it comes to extracting some form of nuclear deal with Tehran?
Well, there's a battle being played out in Tehran right now among different parts of the government. The Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps wants to continue the battle until it gets everything it wants, which is quite an extensive list of demands. The civilians, on the other hand, would see the danger to the Iranian economy, which is already in free fall, and they'd like to cut a deal while one is available to them. So this has some ways to go yet, and it really is going to be decided in Tehran, not necessarily in Washington.
That's a fascinating perspective because, as you put it, there's some diversion within Iran about what direction to go in. And you have the IRGC, which is perhaps more hardline than even the president of Iran. I wonder if you think that taking the foot off the gas pedal when it comes to actual kinetic warfare would actually get Tehran to offer those concessions that the U.S. is seeking, in part because a U.S. official told Axios that continued fighting actually lets Iran dodge responsibility. Is it realistic to seek the kind of changes that the U.S. has been wanting out of Tehran by just letting things play out this way?
Well, it's a long shot that Tehran's going to agree to anything short of its maximal demands. However, I think the official from Axios is correct. If you continue to bomb Iran, they will retaliate against infrastructure around the Middle East, and they'll tell their people, hey, look, we can't do anything for you. We're under attack. If you simply stop the bombing and rely on the economic tool of warfare, the blockade and sanctions, it's going to make it very painful for the Iranian government in the long term. And I think that's actually a better path to a negotiated outcome at this point.
How long do you think that blockade of Iranian ports would have to remain in place for Tehran to offer concessions?
Months. This is not something that's going to be decided quickly. The Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps has got to feel the pain. And the only way they feel the pain is when the Iranian people are so fed up with their leadership and the state of their economy that they pressure the government to come to terms. That's going to take a long time. This war is going to go on for months and hopefully not yours, but you never know.
Wow. Colonel, before we go, the Pentagon has now given contractors 3 weeks to submit plans for faster weapons production. They've cited stockpile concerns that we've reported on, others have reported on. How concerned are you about the military's ability to sustain this fight if the war does drag on?
Well, this is, I think, another reason that the president has decided to go with the blockade and the economic coercion, because if we continue to bomb and have to face the retaliation, we're running out of air defense weapons. And not just for this fight, but for potential fights with China and Russia. So this is a huge concern. And I know that the Joint Chiefs have expressed that concern to the president, which is probably, again, another reason that he's gone down this different course, which is going to take longer to play out, but probably is the best of a lot of bad options at this point.
All right, General, what does the shakeup of the Iranian military leadership tell you? The supreme leader has purportedly named an IRGC veteran as national security chief and then elevated these 6 hardliners to top security positions.
It further complicates the entire situation and makes any kind of a reasonable solution to continue to be eluded by both sides. The Iranians know that they are in the They have the upper hand in terms of the bargaining position. It is my opinion this is going to harden their demands. And of course, we have our own president who is backtracking and now saying that he expects compensation. It is probably true that there are some limited negotiations ongoing, but quite frankly, they are probably not substantial. And so again, the world waits.
Yeah, I mean, so tell us where we are right now, because Trump says Hormuz is open, but actual shipping data indicates it very much is not. And Trump says the U.S. is low-keying negotiations with Iran. There's been relatively little military activity. Are we just seeing this in sort of a waiting game right now?
It's literally a waiting game. You have both sides who are refusing to move, and the Iranians are again in the upper hand. The whole idea that this is about nuclear materials we know to be a complete farce. The president himself said he destroyed that capability 2 wars ago. And the problem is the Iranians now have something much more powerful than a nuclear weapon. It's called, they now can control the strait at any point to eliminate, significantly reduce the oil that goes through there. I mean, there are estimates that this is costing the world somewhere between $1 trillion to $3 trillion. And of course, the American share about that is somewhere about $500 billion. It's shocking how much the negative impact has been on the world because of this venture of our president.
We also learned overnight about the secret plane switch by the president last month when he was flying out of Turkey for the NATO summit on an alternate military plane as part of an elaborate ruse that was prompted by an Iranian threat. What are the possibilities of the actual scope of that threat?
It's difficult to say. And why I say it in that way is because the Iranians would, on one side, perhaps want the Trump to be out of being the president. On the other hand, the Iranians also know that with Trump in, quite frankly, they're in significant control of the situation. So I think this, quite frankly, is propaganda on both sides. I think it's the Iranians doing saber rattling against the president. It's our president doing saber rattling against the Iranians. I think that the true amount of threat to the president probably is, quite frankly, pretty low. So again, it's so difficult to see or to understand how much you can really trust on either side about what they're saying in public.
Let's talk about how big this war is actually getting here. A Saudi-owned commercial vessel was reportedly struck by a missile while it was moving through the Bab al-Mandeb Strait in the Red Sea. The Iran-backed Houthis warned last month that they would target any Saudi ship transiting that strait. They've also claimed other recent attacks, various ones, on Saudi assets. Do you consider this another front in the war at this point? How do you see it?
It's an escalation of the situation in the Middle East. One other very striking development was that Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey signed a pact that an attack against any is an attack against all. The Israelis, in my opinion, this is backfiring on them because now they have 3 very powerful Muslim nations that are, quite frankly, united where they were not united previously. And one of them happens to have a nuclear weapon capability. So I think this is getting more and more difficult. It's getting more and more dangerous in the Middle East and, quite frankly, in that entire hemisphere.
I want to start with you, Adam, because you served in the Air Force, you have deployed a number of times. And I think the context you can provide in this moment is really important because when I was aboard the ship, and as you just heard there, the sailors had varying viewpoints and mental health issues that they were dealing with this long deployment. And I think it's really the uncertainty of it all. They were supposed to be home in May, we're now in August, and there's just that element of uncertainty that's hard.
Well, first off, God bless them, and this is why I actually joined the Air Force, not the Navy, because it's like, that is a very difficult thing. I mean, an average when they go out to sea is like 6 months. This thing is getting close to a year now. And that's the biggest issue. I mean, I remember in one of my deployments, and as pilots, we only deployed like 3 months. They're short because we run out of time that we can fly. But I got extended like a week. And I remember it was just a massive gut punch. I was supposed to leave on a Sunday, and they're like, well, the rotator broke, so you can't go home till the following Sunday. And that was morally, very difficult for your morale. I can't imagine what these young men and women are going through, and I'm glad they're relieving the ship, but clearly this has been a problem that's been brewing.
Yeah, and normally they have port calls, even though it's
Yeah,
been longer than
exactly.
expected, where they can at least set foot on dry land.
Well, I mean, just imagine being on basically a football field for about 200 days. That's rough.
And it's, you know, small quarters and so forth. But at the same time, no one expected it to be a luxury hotel, right? I mean, I think that there's that balance there where they don't sign up for that, but that doesn't make it easier. It doesn't mean that this is an easy deployment, and there aren't some challenges and a lot of pressure on these young sailors. And when Secretary Hegseth, for his part, has been asked about some of the conditions, back in April, he called it fake news. There was reporting about the food being spoiled, not having enough food. As you heard there was a time where they had to ration food because of supply issues during combat. And then today, he basically just downplayed the reports and seemed to suggest that it was misrepresented. I wonder if you think that's the right approach here.
Well, and look, I think the most important thing is the fact that it does seem like they're now sending out the USS Washington out there that's going to provide some relief. And look, I think the Secretary, along with the entire administration, I imagine, takes all of this very seriously. I mean, nothing's more important than the morale of your troops in the middle of essentially a combat zone right now. And so it's important that they have the resources they need. It's also right for Congress to ask the questions it has to do, and it's important for the administration to continue to focus on their morale so they continue to carry out this really important mission. I mean, those are all patriotic Americans who dedicate their lives to ensuring the well-being and safety. They're in a very challenging scenario right now. But, you know, I think they're all going to come back home safely soon, and we'll welcome them back. And, you know, I'm happy to treat a few to a nice steak dinner